Okay, guys, so please make sure that you have your cameras on before we start. Yeah. Okay, everyone, try to turn your cameras on. Okay, so we have more people coming in. All right. So last week we have basically we're done with the first task. We are still in the speaking section. Remember that the speaking section has 4 tasks total. We have covered the first one last week. And this week we will be looking at, today we will be looking at question 2 and next class at question 3. So yeah, question 2 now. So for this task, this is an integrated task, which means that, you gotta do something before you get to answer the question. And also they will be evaluating more than just your speaking. This is also about understanding and comprehension skills. And, somehow they're also evaluating your reading and your listening skills. So that's why it's an integrated task. What you need to do here for this task is, basically this. First, you will be asked to read a text, which is a short one, not that long. It's not like in the reading section, something like this. And after that, for 50 seconds. And after that, you will listen to a conversation, a casual one between 2 students who are going to be talking about that text. And then basically you will get the question, which is always the same one. That's basically asking you to summarize everything, to report everything, summarizing it, give all the important and relevant info. And you will be given 30 seconds to prepare your response, maybe to organize your thoughts, your ideas, to look at your notes, to reread the text if you want. And then you will have 60 seconds to speak, to deliver your response and summarize everything that you have read and you have listened to. So that's it. That's exactly what you have to do. First, you read for 50 seconds, you listen to a conversation, you get 30 seconds to prepare your response, and then 60 to speak. And by the way, you don't really have to remember, these numbers here. I mean, you do, but this is going to be the same for question 2, 3, and 4 from now on. So this is the timing for all the integrated tasks in the speaking section. So I think that's going to make it easier for you to remember. But yeah, just saying. So regarding content, that was a structure. Now regarding content, what is it exactly what you need to read, what you need to listen to? Let's see. So what you will be reading, or basically everything, is going to go around a campus announcement or a campus change. So the thing that you're going to be reading is an announcement, is like, it's probably something that you would see in the college newspaper. Is the university usually announcing something, or sometimes you have a student proposing something through this letter. So sometimes it's a letter, sometimes it's an announcement, but it's always about a change or something that's going on campus. So again, this is all happening inside campus. You have to read this text, which is probably an announcement or a letter, and that is about a change. So something's going on, a change will happen, has happened, or someone's proposing that change to happen, basically. So in this text, you will always find 3 things. You will find out what the change is, or what the plan or the proposal is, and then you will find the reason supporting that change. So why that change is happening, basically. And after you read that in the listening, the students are going to be talking about the same, and they're going to be giving they're going to be stating their position, explaining their opinion about the change. And then you just have to summarize everything. Now, when you're summarizing, you won't need to give your personal opinion. You don't need to talk about yourself anymore. You don't even need to, use the pronoun I, because it's not about you anymore. This is not like in the first task. So everything you really have to do is like think like a reporter and go like, okay, so the university wants to do that because of this reason. However, the student thinks that this is not a good idea because of this reason and that reason. So the student says this and that. So you don't have to talk about yourself. You don't have to tell me what you think or anything. It's all about them, you know, the university and the student. So you will see that in a minute. Okay, before we look at the example, any questions so far, you know, mainly about the structure, you know, the timing or how it works in a test? Any questions, like technical questions? Okay. So regarding the reading, let's go there for a minute. So the most common type of reading that you will have is this one, where you have a change and two reasons for the change. And the most common type is where the university is announcing that change. So it's the university's idea, it's the university's plan. However, that's not the only type of reading that you could get. There are some other options or, you know, probabilities here. Let me maybe change the background. Okay. So you have two options for the reading. Either it's the university's announcement, or as I was already telling you, it could be also a student's letter. So the most common one is when you have like a proposal or a decision or something, but a change and the reasons. However, sometimes you will get this other type, which I have seen like maybe once or twice. So it's not that common, but it could be, you know? So sometimes instead of a change and like the reasons for the change, sometimes you will have a problem and two suggestions, two ways to solve the problem. So it could be something like maybe a change and the reasons. Maybe the university wants to change the menu of the cafeteria. And you have two reasons. They want to make the food healthier and they want to make it cheaper. Two reasons. Or maybe it could be a problem and some suggestions. Maybe, I don't know, maybe, what can we say? Maybe I don't know, maybe the current menu of the cafeteria is too expensive. So they have two suggestions. Maybe they want not change the menu, or they could eliminate or, I don't know, create another cafeteria, maybe. So those are, you know, it's different. Then you have a problem, it's too expensive, and you have two suggestions, two possible suggestions, like creating a new cafeteria or changing the menu. So those are the two things that you could find. Sometimes it's the university themselves, like proposing something, or sometimes it's a student who is sending a letter to someone. In the case that you have a student letter, sometimes you have something it's very obvious, honestly, because at the end of the text, you have something like, okay, let's maybe erase this. You have something like yours or sincerely and Annette, right? At the end of the text. So if you see this, then you know already it's probably a letter, right? By a student. And you will also see that you have like first person. I think that we should be doing this because of this and that reason. But if it's the university, it's something like, we think that this is what we need to do. Or this department thinks that this is what we need to do. Or the director said this, or the dean said that, I don't know. So you have those possibilities out there. Okay. So is that okay so far? Any questions? Okay. So let's try and read this. Will anybody read it? The text? Anybody can read? Maybe, I don't know who's there. Danny, would you please read it?
Okay. Missing coming to cafeterias. Mary Dixon, director of the Student Life Committee, announced yesterday that beginning next semester, university cafeterias will broadcast classical music during mealtimes. Music will foster a more relaxed atmosphere, said Dixon. Students' lives are hectic, and mealtimes provide important opportunities to make a break and catch up with friends before moving on to the next class or assignment, added Dixon. We're also hoping that if we provide the music, students will unplug their personal music devices, their Walkmans and MP3 players, or whatever, and will spend more time talking to each other. When students have their headphones on, they are not connecting with each other.
Okay, thanks so much, Dani. So, will anybody tell me what the change is? What is the plan, or what's going on, or what's going to happen? What's the change in this case?
They are going to play music in the cafeteria.
Perfect, that's it. They're going to play music in the cafeterias. So here's a tip for you all. The first thing that you need to do here is obviously read the title. So please don't skip it. You know, and this goes for everything that you're gonna, everything that has a title, you need to read it. So read the title here. Believe me, that's probably gonna be the change, or it's gonna give you a good idea of what the change is, or it's like a good summary of what the change is. So always make sure to read the title and pay attention in the text for words like plans or announces to, or has decided to, or is planning to, I don't know, or is proposing to. Pay attention to words like that could give you, that probably that they're gonna like direct you to the change. Okay, now, but can anybody tell me why? So what are the reasons for this change? Why are they gonna be playing music in the cafeterias?
Because the director thinks that will provide students with a more relaxing atmosphere and will make them socialize more.
Perfect. That's it. There you go. So those are the two reasons. Now let me tell you this, you will always have two reasons. No matter what, you have the change and two reasons. Or if it's a problem, you have one problem and two suggestions. But it always works that way. You will not have three or four or one, you will always have two. So make sure or get used to the idea of having two. Another thing you guys can do to identify or just to know where the two could be is kind of divide this into two. If you think about it, like the first one, all about the first one is in the first half of the text, and all about the second one is in the second half. Sometimes we will even have some transitions here, like, furthermore, Dixon also thinks that this will provide blah, blah, blah. So pay attention for those connectors as well. Now, another thing I want to say here, make sure that it's always better if you do what David did, basically, he wasn't really summarizing the arguments. He just pointed out some quotes, he was quoting this. So this will foster a more relaxed atmosphere, and this will give them time to talk to each other, to connect more maybe, but that's it. So try to find those keywords, keywords that summarize the whole thing, summarize the whole argument for you. So try to find those. And a final tip I can give you here, don't focus on the details. You don't really care about, what the name of the director is, or whether it's the director of the Student Life Committee, or whether it's going to be starting next semester, or anything at all, really. You just need to find those three things that I said, the change and the reasons. You don't care about the details. Believe me, those are not important. They're not going to be helpful. So just forget about it. Okay, so change two reasons, summarize them as much as you can, identify if you have keywords, and forget about the details. So is that okay for when you're reading? Are we all good? Okay then. So next thing, where you're listening to the, okay, so after you read for 50 seconds, you will listen to the two students, remember? So these two students will be talking about it. So they will be like, hey, have you heard the new, I don't know, have you got the news? And what do you think about it? You know, what are your thoughts on the new, on the university's plan or something? And there will just be one student who's going to have a strong position, a strong mind about it. The other one is going to be just like a passive listener. So one student will be given like their opinion, and the other one will be just listening, like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, maybe you're right. But you just care basically about the student who has a strong opinion, right? The other one is not important. Okay, so that student could be either in favor or against this change. So they could be like, well, I think that's a great idea and it's for sure gonna work and it's the best thing I've ever heard and blah, blah, blah. Or they could be more like, I'm not sure if that's gonna work. I think that's a terrible idea in there. They haven't thought it through. It's not gonna work. I don't know. So you have those two options. If you're wondering which one is the most common one, then the answer is the one where the student is against the change. That is the most common one. Like 80% of the times you will have that case. But you know, sometimes we don't know, maybe you have the one where the student is in favor of the change. So hopefully we'll be looking at both today. Okay, what else? It doesn't really matter whether the student is in favor or against it. They will provide two other reasons why they have the opinion that they have. So if the student is against the change, then they have to explain why. You know, they need to tell you why. And they were probably going to be responding to these arguments. So when you're listening, please try to pay attention to arguments that respond to these ones. So ask yourself, what does the student think about this? About creating a more relaxed atmosphere? What does the student think? Or what are the students' thoughts about this, connecting with each other? Try to look for those, and yes, and then you'll be fine. You will get it. What else? One tip I could give you for when you're listening is, you know, I said that you will have two students. So my tip is sometimes, you know, paying attention to just one of them is okay, because just one of them is the one that's important. But sometimes the other student, the passive listener one, will be like summarizing everything for you. So basically, the other student will be doing your job. So you also want to pay attention to them. For instance, here in this example here, it's a different one, I think, but this is a transcript. So the question, I mean, you know, the student or the question is about the, where's the question here? The question is about the female student, the woman. But in this case, the male student is also, you know, in the conversation, and the male student is going to be basically just summarizing everything that the female one says. So this one is like, well, I don't think it's going to work for this reason. And they're going on and on and on about the same thing. And like a lot of arguments and a lot of details there. And the other one will be like, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, now that I think about it, we blah, blah, blah. And you have a summary there for everything that the other one has been saying. So pay attention to that summary. Sometimes you got it, sometimes you don't. But it's good to, you know, like have that in mind, because basically you can just paraphrase this and you don't have to worry about all the other details that the other student was giving, you know? So that's just a tip. What else can I say? Regarding the question. Now here, this is important. So the question, it's not this one, this is just like an interpretation of the question. Okay, let me. Well, I don't know what's wrong with that. But the question is this one, always the same one for everything. The woman or the man, in case it's a man, expresses his or her opinion about the announcement. State their opinion and explain the reasons that they give for holding that opinion. So as you can see, the question is all about the student. You don't have anything here about the reading, you know, it's all about the listening. The student expresses their opinion, state their opinion, explain their reasons. So they're not even asking about the reading. So this, I want to be clear on this. This doesn't mean that you don't have to talk about the reading, that the reading is not important and you don't care about it. But it does mean that the listening is more important. So in all of the integrated tasks that you will be looking at starting now, the listening is way more important than the reading. So in your response, you gotta like speak more about the listening and less about the reading. Okay, I'm just saying. This is the new question, by the way, and we will have a look at the previous one in like when we get to the template. I'll show you guys that one. But basically, I'm just giving you tips as we go. So, any questions now about, you know, the content of the reading, the content of the listening, or anything? Okay, guys.
I'm sorry, I have a question. When we are going to have our response, we have to first like introduce with the reading and then talk about the listening.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what you gotta do. We're gonna get there. We will go to the template in the response. But yes, you just said it. You basically, the reading is gonna be your introduction, and then you will move on to the student, and that's gonna be like your body, the body of your response. But we will see.
Okay, thank you.
And yes, David.
Thank you. If I were you, I will just summarize the reading in one single phrase and use the rest of the time for describing the student's position.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You read my mind. That's exactly what I was planning on saying after when we get there. So yeah, that's like an awesome tip. So yes, you'll see that that's what you need to. Any other comments or questions before we get to the listening? Because we're gonna listen to this conversation here. Okay. So now let's listen to the conversation between the students. You know what to do. You know, you have it's gonna be about the same change, music coming to the cafeterias. You have the reasons here, so you just need to look and try to catch those arguments responding to them. So if you guys are ready and you have a pen and a piece of paper, then we can go. Okay, this is the one. Okay, guys, so here it goes. Let's listen.
Now listen to two students discussing the university's plan.
This article? Are they serious?
Yeah, I think so. Why?
Well, first of all, a lot of kids aren't looking for a relaxing break at lunchtime. They like to study while they eat, especially if they have exams coming up or some assignment they have to get done.
Yeah, that's true.
And now they won't be able to concentrate. This is going to be very distracting.
Okay. Yeah, I see your point.
And second, most students don't like classical music.
It's certainly not what I listen to.
Are people listening to their own music?
No.
I think people are going to be even more likely to bring their MP3 player, you know, to play their own music and block out the classical stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The man expresses his opinion of the university's plan. State his opinion and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion.
Okay, so as you can see, we got the new question here. You know, the one that we were talking about. The man expresses his opinion, states his opinion and his reasons. However, you know, just to clarify that part, let me show you the previous question. And when I say previous, I mean, I think starting August 2019, they have changed the TOEFL, you know? And one of the things they changed is the question. But believe me, you still need to do the same thing that you did for the previous one. So let me show you the previous question. I think I got it here somewhere. Probably this one here. Okay.
About the
Okay,
proposal.
sorry, here's the question. So the question used to be, the man expresses his opinion about the proposal, you know, same as usual. But then you have this part, briefly summarize the proposal, then state the man's opinion about the proposal and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. So you used to have this part, briefly summarize the proposal. And that's what you gotta do, okay? Still, you still need to do that, even if the question you may be tempted to think that you don't. So let's see, let's see what you need to do. But first, let's talk about the listening. So is the student in favor or against the change?
Against?
Against.
Good, the student is against. So he thinks it's not such a good idea after all. Okay, and can you guys tell me why? What was the first reason that the student gives?
He said it's very distracting.
Good, distracting. Anything else?
He said that not everybody likes classical music.
Okay, that's the second one, isn't it? Not everybody likes. Okay, anything else you guys want to add in any of the two reasons?
Maybe in the first one, it could be that some students use that time to relax or study or do some assignment that it isn't finished.
Okay, so perfect. That's great. Yes, they use, you know, the meal times, the time in which they want to play the music, they use it to study, to complete assignments, and everything else. Okay, anything else?
And also said that for the second reason that some students not like classical music and they are going to play their own music in their MP3.
Okay, that's perfect. Yes, they will play their own music. And I like that because, okay, and here's another tip, especially in your response. You know, don't just, I know the reasons are, you know, you can say the student believes that this will be distracting for them because they want to use that time to study and complete assignments. Or the student believes that not everyone likes classical music, so they will play their own music. So if I were you guys, I will try to also connect it a bit to the reading. So I could say, you know, because if you think about it, this is all responding to this. So the university says, we want to create for you a more relaxed atmosphere. And the student is like, well, but I don't want a more relaxed atmosphere. I want to study and focus on my exams, on my tests, my assignments during that time. So it's responding to that argument. The same goes with this one, right? the university is like, we want the students to connect with each other. And the student is like, yeah, but we don't like classical music, so we're not gonna connect with each other. We're instead gonna play our own music. And so your goal is basically not gonna be achieved. So you wanna show that you understand that connection in your response. So we're gonna see how to do that. I'm gonna give you some phrases maybe that you can use. But yes, just try to make sure that you understand that connection. And then in your response, you can try to do that, connect those ideas. That's perfect, you guys. That's it. You got it. All right, now regarding the template and the response, now we're here. So as David was saying at the beginning, it's the best you can do, guys, is summarize the reading in one sentence, just one sentence or one phrase. So the whole reading, you're gonna summarize it and compact it in just one sentence, which is gonna be, by the way, your introduction. So this is just to give a bit of context, because if you start right off with a student, then it's not gonna look organized. It's not gonna look like it has that structure, like you know what you're doing. So please always make sure to briefly mention the reading, but briefly, quickly. So it's one sentence. You can do something like this. You can say, the university plans, proposes, once has decided to broadcast or play classical music in meal times, since, and then you tell me the first reason, since they want students, or they want to create a more relaxed atmosphere, and they want students to connect. But that's it. It's one sentence. It has different parts, but it's just one. Now, believe me, the mistake that I have seen the most here is the students getting into details here. So they're like, so the director of the student committee has said or has announced that they will be broadcasting or playing music starting next semester, because one of the directors said that this will create a more relaxed atmosphere because the students' lives are hectic, and they also said that they want students to not to use their MP3 players, and they want them to talk a lot more. So they go into detail and they go on and on about their reading, and they're just wasting their time there, and their response is, before they know it, they're done with the 60 seconds. So please don't do that. Make sure that it's just one sentence. You don't need to add connectors or transitions here. That's another thing that I have seen. Like, the university wants to do that. First, because they think that blah, blah, blah. Second, because they also think this, and that. Don't add any transitions in there. You can just say since, or due to the fact that, and that's it. So that's your introduction. It shouldn't last longer than 15 seconds at most. Now, next thing you do is you mark a pause. You see these dots here? So they are like indicators that you need to not slow down, but stop, for just 1-2 seconds, breathe in and move on. So, and then you need a transition. Now, believe me, guys, here the transition is really important, because it's gonna create a structure, a sense of a structure in your response. So make sure that you use a transition in there, preferably a long one. And you can use these words, or you can change it if you want. But I personally like this meanwhile here, because it gives you the chance to use it no matter what the student's position is. Some people like to say something like, however, by contrast, on the other hand, but that only works when the student is against the change. But what happens if the student is in favor? I have heard people say, however, the student likes the idea, which doesn't make any sense, right? That's gonna hurt your score because you're not using the correct transition. So I would say that this meanwhile is a pretty good one. It's completely neutral, and you can use it no matter what. So meanwhile, the student likes the idea, doesn't like the idea, is in favor of the idea, or likes the plan, or advocates the plan, whatever you want to say there. You add a transition, and then you start with your body. So this is the most important part. Make sure that you use transitions, like to provide the arguments. So first, he states that that they don't need a relaxed atmosphere due to the fact that they are focused on their exams, they're completing assignments in that time. As a result, I don't know, this won't work. In addition, she believes that whatever it is, I think that most students don't like classical music, and I don't know, they're more likely to plug their MP3 players for this is not of their students' taste, whatever. So you're just explaining the reasons. You're using transitions like first, in addition, moreover, furthermore. And another thing, you're using these reporting verbs here. So make sure you use them as well. You say something like states, beliefs, because you're giving them credit. You know that these are not your ideas. This is not what you're saying. So you cannot tell me something like, first, this will not work since students don't like classical music. As a result, they will connect their devices to black out or the music, and they will end up connecting even less. That's perfect, but that's not the way to do it. You need to tell me, first, the student believes that this will not work. The student states that the students don't like classical music. The student considers that this will happen and this won't happen. I don't know. So you need to use those reporting verbs in there. They don't have to be in the simple past. So you don't have to say stated, believed, said, thought. You can use the present, and what else? Try not to use the classical says or thinks. I would go for different ones. And yeah, I know I have talked for too much, but I think that's pretty much it. Any questions now? Are we okay with this? Okay. So anybody wants to try to see how it goes? You know, using the same example, we will do one more. But before we do that, will anybody want to try?
Can I try?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
So, but I will be measuring your time. So you can go ahead now.
The university announced that the next semester they are going to have music in the meal time, since they want their students to have more relaxed time, and second, they want the students have more connection each other. Meanwhile, the student doesn't advocate this idea. First, he states that that time they used for doing their assignments or studying, and they are going to concentrate. And second, he believes that classical music don't like for everyone, so he thinks that most students are going to use their own MP3 to listen their own music.
Okay, perfect, Melissa. Thanks so much. That was nice. So you covered it all. You were using the structure. You were using those reporting verbs, transitions, and everything. Perfect. That was just great. I would maybe try to work a bit on time at the beginning, especially because, for instance, in this case, you took 30 seconds to give that intro and the transition. And it has to be like at most 20 for the transition and the introduction. So that way you will have 20 and 20, you know? So just try to summarize a bit more. Remember, don't tell me whether it's going to be next semester, or don't use the transitions at here, you know, like first, second, or they also want. So just say the university wants to play classical music in the cafeterias since they want students to connect and relax. That's it. And then you move on. So just that, yeah, just that. Everything else, I think that was perfect, a perfect response, and we're starting good. Okay. Any questions, you guys, before we look at one example?
Teacher, to be honest, I am not understanding very well about this. How is this different
Okay.
from the others?
What do you mean? How's this different from what?
From the others speaking in this one? Because you said not use transitions, but then you said use transitions, and that's
Okay. I
sorry.
said don't use transitions in the introduction. So, okay. Let's wrap it up. The first task, the one that we saw last week, was completely different. Of course, in general, like generally speaking, in the speaking section, you need to try to use transitions. They're gonna add vocabulary and a structure and coherence even. So obviously it's always good to use transitions. Now, regarding the difference between the speaking tasks, the one that we have looked at last week, the first one, the independent one, this one, where you have the question and then you answer it, was completely different. You have a different structure. Sorry for that noise. So every question is going to be different. You got to, but in the independent one, it was your opinion, right? You needed to answer the question directly about what you think with your own examples. You didn't get to report anything, so you didn't need to use those reporting maps like the student states or something like that. You just need to talk about yourself here. Now, in the one that we're looking at right now, it's about what we just saw, it's about something going on campus, a student giving their opinion about something, and you just have to report everything. Now, maybe the part in which you got confused is when I said don't use transitions, but I said that for the beginning, here in this introduction. So when you summarize the reading, when you say the university wants to do this because of this and that reason, don't use transitions in there because it's gotta be quick. And if you use transitions, that means that you're giving more than one sentence. And as David was saying at the beginning, it's always better to have just one sentence. So if you say like, the university wants to play classical music in the cafeterias, and then you say, first, they want to do that in order for students to connect. Additionally, they also want students to have a more relaxed atmosphere so that they can have a break from college and relax and chill. So if you're using those transitions in here, then that's gonna take more time. You're gonna use more sentences. And as I was saying, you only have like 15 seconds at most to do this. So you don't have time to use transitions there. However, in the rest of the response, you have to use transitions like meanwhile, first, in addition. You need to use them there, but not here in the beginning. Okay, so I don't know. Is that clear? Did I answer your question?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, so yeah, I know it's confusing because every task is gonna be different. The one that we're gonna be looking at next class is gonna be different as well. It's about a whole other new thing. It's about academic things. So keep in mind that you have 4 tasks in the speaking section. Each one is different from each other. You have to do different things. You have different topics. And yeah, don't get mixed up. Try to have them organized and practice as well so that you get used to the idea of having different ones. Okay. So if we have time, I would like to do one more, and at least maybe 2 or 3 people can do it. So, okay. We're gonna see one where the student agrees with the announcement, so that you can also have a look at that. So let me see. Okay. Okay. So this is the reading now. Know what to do, identify the change, aka the title, and the reasons for the change. You have 50 seconds to read this. Go ahead. Okay. Now we will listen to the conversation. Let's see what the student thinks about this change.
Now listen to two students discussing the article. What do you think of the proposal?
I think it'll work. I mean, the range of the station now is basically limited to the campus, and so it's basically just a few programs, mainly for students.
Yeah?
Well, if this proposal goes through, there will be more programs, and it'll give the students more professional experience as they experiment with programming for a much larger, real-life audience. And stuff like that'll give them a better shot at getting a job after they graduate.
Of course.
Besides, the whole university will benefit from it.
What do you mean?
Well, you know my friend Tony, right? He told me that the radio station at his university did something like this about 5 years ago.
And?
Well, it's a success. They are making a lot of money out of commercials, and they are using it to offer more scholarships and to help fund projects to renovate the facilities of other programs.
That sounds really good. The woman supports the proposal described in the article. Explain why she thinks it will achieve the university's goals.
Okay, guys. So now I'll give you all 30 seconds to prepare your response. I'm gonna also leave it there if you want to read it, but go ahead. Okay, guys. So, who will want to try?
I want to try.
Okay, that's good. And also David does. Okay, so first, let's go with you, and then David's gonna do it. So, you can go ahead now.
The university wants to expand the station broadcasting range to nearby towns since they want to attract more students and get an extra revenue from commercial ads. Meanwhile, the students advocates this idea first because she states that the students will get more experience from the variety of programs they will have the opportunity to prepare, and that will help them for their work. Second, because a friend of her, his university already tried this and was a success, since the university earned a lot of money that later they spent in benefits for the students.
Okay, so that was perfect, Rina. I love. Did you guys see how the timing was? I think it was perfectly timed, right? So she used exactly 20 seconds for the introduction plus the transition, 20 for the first argument and 20 for the second, and it worked perfectly. So that's perfect. You were using the transitions, the template. You provided all relevant information. Uh, yeah, just perfect. I wouldn't really change anything out of that response. So awesome. And also the tenses. That's another tip that I wanted to say. Careful with the tenses. It usually is a struggle because usually you have these plans in the future. And so careful with that. Usually the tenses are going to be in the future, like will, and would. Or, yeah, that's in case it's a decision that has already been made, it could be the past, but it's usually not the case. So you were using the right tenses as well. Okay, I'll give you some ideas at the end. But perfect, Karina. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, and David, you go now. Okay, David, go ahead.
The university is planning to expand their radio's broadcasting area. This is due to the fact that they will attract more students and they will reach towns around. This will make students more interested in their communications program, and they will be able to insert some commercials, and that will bring more money to the university. The female students agrees with this since students will get more professional experience and the extra money will be used for new equipment and the university can invest them in scholarships too.
Okay, nice too, David. That was great. All right, so it was a bit different, but it was also good. We were covering the relevant information. What I could tell you, some tips. At the beginning, summarize them more. You use like 30 seconds for that intro and the transition. And as you yourself said, it's got to be a bit shorter. Careful with that. And also try to separate your two arguments at the end a bit more. So instead of transitioning, like this will give students professional experience and they could use the money and they could do this and this and that. Make sure that you separate them to show that structure in there. Yeah, but just that, I think it's mostly the structure that you're missing. So careful with that, and you will be fine. Okay. Anybody else who wants to go?
Can I try?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Okay, Yoshi. So off you go.
Okay. The reading passage announced an expansion of the station broadcasting. In particular, one goal for the university is to attract more students to apply to its communication program. The student in the conversation is favor of this idea. To start, she said they will have opportunities to prepare, and that will help for their works and secondly, she explains that
Okay, so that was good as well. Okay, I think what you were missing was just time. You didn't have time to explain the second reason, and you didn't either explain the first one, or I mean, like the second one from the university. So the one about the funds and the earnings and the revenue was missing. So just that. Careful at the beginning. Again, that's why I said at the beginning, try not to use transitions for the intro. So you were using pretty good ones. I gotta be honest, I liked the transitions you were using, like in particular, and all the things that you were saying, but try to do this a lot more quicker, like the university, and instead of saying the reading passage announces, so careful, it's better if you just say the announcement. You could say the announcement is about expanding the radio, but it's even more direct if you go with the university, or if it's a student, you will say the student. The university plans to expand the radio since they want to attract students and earn or have a new source of revenue. That's it. Okay. If you're adding transitions in there, if you're adding more things that even though they sound good and they sound fancy and they are complex and everything, they're going to be taking your time. So careful there. Careful with the reporting verbs. Like, try not to use this one, especially if it's in the past. The student said that. The student says, you could say, but try to use other ones. And yeah, just that. Again, it's mostly a structure. So don't forget that. Okay. Any questions? Anybody else wants to go? Okay, guys. Oh, some tips. Okay, very quickly. So here are some words you could use to connect your ideas, maybe. You know, in this example, for instance, where the student is in favor of the change, you could use words like certainly, indeed, for sure, absolutely. So just to reinforce, you know, the argument. So the student believes that this will indeed be a good source of revenue, as she had a friend who did the same thing in his university and it worked just fine. So that this will certainly be a good source of help, or that this will absolutely give students professional experience. Those are some words. And in case you have where the student is against the change, to connect the ideas, you could say, even though this will give them professional experience, they don't have the budget to do it. Or although, or this won't work for, so, you know, some extra thing. So, okay. Any questions now before we leave?
Can we use present progressive? For example, the university is planning on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. For sure, at the beginning, the university is planning, or is planning on, and that will be.
Okay.
And also, if it depends, you know, in case it's a decision that has already been made, you could say the university has decided to. It depends really on how the thing is. But it usually is a plan, so yeah, it will work. Okay, guys. So then before you leave, I'll start today's survey. And I think there's one extra question, but it's specifically for this group, the new group. Like, okay, I don't know if you guys know in which group you're in, but I think you can all answer the question, and so that way we don't get mixed up. Okay, guys, bye-bye. If you have answered, you're free to go. I'll see you all next class.
Bye. See you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care. Bye. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.